Okay, we'll be with everybody in just a couple minutes. We're just getting ready to stream to YouTube. Okay, we'll be with everybody in just a couple minutes. Okay, we're ready to go.
Thank you so much, Margaret. And welcome, everyone. This is a town hall on school council operations this evening. I'm Felicia Cito-Lau, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening on such short notice, but we're all ready to welcome and interact with you this evening. First, I'd like to ask that Dee Williams, my other co-chair, provide the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you so much, Felicia. Welcome to our school council town hall this evening. My name is Dee Williams. I'm the other PIAC co-chair, the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee here at TDSB. And I'd like to do our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples.
Thank you, Dee. At this time, I'd just like to talk a little bit more about PIAC, or the Parent Involvement Advisory Committee. Our mandate is to advise the Toronto District School Board and also Ministry of Education on ways to support more effective parent engagement and also to improve student achievement and well-being. And also another part of our mandate is to enhance accountability of the education system. So that's our mandate. We meet monthly, and our meetings are open to the public. So we welcome to have you join us. You can find our meeting calendar and the Zoom links on our TorontoPIAC.com website. And at the very bottom, there's a calendar that you can find our meetings at. Also, we have a number of working groups that are open to community members, and we would definitely appreciate having community members join our working groups. There is a working group sign-up form available on our website. Again, it's TorontoPIAC.com. At this time, I'd like to welcome Michelle Monroe to lead us into the agenda this evening. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Felicia. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Hello, TDSB, parents, caregivers, school council members, school council chairs, staff. I am so thrilled and excited to be here. But let me first thank you for being with us this evening. Wow, I am so glad that you can be here. Let me welcome back all of our parents and caregivers, whether virtual or in person, back to another amazing school year. And I want to thank each and every one of you, first of all, for all that you have done to keep yourselves and your children motivated and inspired throughout the last couple of years, of 2 years since we've been through this COVID period. But I also want to say thank you for getting your students ready to even begin the year, whether in person or virtual. I can't even fathom what that has been. So thank you and welcome back. To the administrators or staff of TDSB who may be joining us, let me say thank you. I know for many of our principals, what you do is sometimes invisible, but because I've connected with so many of you over the summer, I know how hard you have been working to get our schools ready, but also, to make sure everything is on point and safe for our students to return. So I just want to say tonight that we see you. We don't always acknowledge and recognize you. So I wanted to do that tonight because a lot of engagement that happens in the school happens because of what you do. So thank you for that. And the last thing I want to say in my welcome is it would behoove me not to say tonight that our new director, Colleen Russell Rollins, has joined the TDSB. And if you've not heard from her, you will be hearing from her real soon. If there's no reason you plan on joining us at the Parents and Caregivers as Partners Conference that's scheduled for Saturday, October 16th and the 17th, then that's one reason that I'm hoping you will, to hear her bring greetings to parents and caregivers across our district. So without further ado, let's go into the evening's agenda. You're going to hear from me for about the next 15 or 20 minutes. Just indulge me because I just wanted to provide you some information and updates as to where we're at. We're going to do a quick thought exchange. Those of you who joined us in the past, you'll know that a thought exchange is we'll pose a question to you, we'll send you the virtual link, and you go in and you share your thoughts with us, and we'll be able to share those immediately back with you. I'm going to encourage that you participate in this one, because there's great news connected to it, why I'm intentionally using the Thought Exchange program this evening. And then we're going to put you in a breakout. You're going to get a choice to choose one of the following breakout sessions this evening, where you'll be in a small group for a period of time, just talking either about bylaws, school council elections, engaging parents and caregivers into school council elections, or embedding equity and anti-oppression work into your school council. And then we'll come back for a Q&A where we'll hear from you. We ask that during the Q&A period that you put your questions in the Q&A box to be sure that we can access and respond to as many of your questions as we can this evening. All right, so we're about to get started. All right. So I want to begin with just where we're at right now, that we have returned to school. We're still under COVID-19 guidelines within our district. Many of the parents, as you know, that your children are still adhering to masks. We're still looking at putting in safety protocols within the schools. And so that's really the environment that we've come back to, where we have families who are doing virtual, and then parents whose children who are also in person. We are with parents and caregivers who have spent some time learning virtual tools and using them to engage, and school councils that have been using virtual tools in an amazing way to engage. And while we transition back into our school year, we still have families who are still engaging in a digital divide. We still have families who are still dealing with food security issues. And so I mentioned these things so that while we are slowly begin to transition back, that we keep in mind that each of us experience transition back in the same way. But I also want to gently remind us that while we transition, we are not operating as business as usual, right? And what we really don't want to do is go back to business as usual, because we can honestly say that business as usual wasn't really working for everyone, right? And so I found this great quote that I fell in love with, that I'm going to take a moment to read, right? And it says, humans, in order to break with the past and imagine their future worlds anew, pandemics can play a key role in our lives. Pandemics could be a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, or avarice, or data banks and dead ideas, or dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can use a pandemic to walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. And this quote struck me. I think I picked it up in another workshop that I was in where they were talking about transitions and how we think about transitions from a pandemic and how we take the great learnings from a pandemic and make sure that's what we walk into transition with, and that we don't take some of the old ideas, practices that we may have had prior to the pandemic back into the pandemic. And so when I link that specifically to school councils, I am hoping that this year we will be able to enter into our work as school councils, shedding some practices that we know that did not work well for all parents and caregivers, engaging in new practices that is innovative and creative, that brings the learnings from the pandemic. So, for example, we learned a lot about what virtual tools can do. We learned a lot about how parents are willing to engage virtually and can, if we provide them with the right supports and tools. We learned a lot about how we can begin to engage various racialized parents, caregivers, and communities more into our work. We've learned a lot about how we need to stop and think about the ways in which our practices were intentionally or unintentionally silencing all voices, prohibiting all voices from operating in the space. And we also learned a tremendous about the ways in which we can connect and communicate with each other in ways that are healthy and safe. And I'm really hoping that those are some key learnings that we carry into our year this year in terms of our school councils. So I want to speak briefly about some of the practices for school councils that we've had to carry over from last year because we're still within the COVID period. So we are still, just get them all up at the same time. My computer will cooperate. So in terms of council elections, we have extended the return to school protocols with the okay of the Ministry of Education, the 30-day requirement. So what that essentially means is that Regulation 612, the regulation 30 days will start on September 24th. Therefore, council elections must be held by the last week of October. This doesn't mean that your council cannot host elections. It just simply means that we're providing schools the opportunity to ensure that their in-person classrooms and parents are settled, that their virtual parents and caregivers have settled, so that school council elections is inclusive of all parents and caregivers within the school, whether virtual or in person. Even within this new guideline, the principal is still required at least 14 days before the date of the election to provide ample notice to all parents and caregivers about the elections. And I want to gently remind school council that elections, that first round of elections is about electing your parents and caregivers as voting members of council. What that means is you are putting out nominations not for school council chair, vice chair, secretary, or treasurer, or any position on council. You are actually just hosting election for any parent or caregiver who is interested in becoming a voting member of council. I have heard and received many emails about this today, so I just wanted to emphasize your first school council elections are for parents and caregivers who are interested in being voting members on council, not for executive positions, not for chair, co-chair, treasurer, etc. The last piece in terms of the elections that I wanted to highlight is that virtual parents and caregivers, so meaning those who have children who are registered in our virtual schools, you have the option to choose whether you become voting members of school council of either the existing home school or the virtual whole school that your children are registered in. So let me say that again, that if you have children registered in the virtual program, then as a parent, you can run for council in the virtual host school in which your child is registered, or the actual home school that your child is connected to. And why this direction? I think we talked with the ministry and thought this was best in offering parents option just based on our learnings last year, so that this year parents will get the opportunity to determine what's best for them, where they think it's the best place for them to represent council and be active in. What we do ask is that you cannot be both. You cannot do both in this year. I know outside of the COVID procedures, parents could be school council members on councils if their children are in different schools. In light of the fact that we're virtual and in person, we've left it at you may choose, but you may not do both. And all school council meetings, elections, committee meetings will remain virtual in light of the fact that the board still has an essential guideline only, essential staff guideline only for schools that are still in place under the COVID guidelines. All right, so let's speak a bit now about school council meetings. They are postponed, but postponed don't mean that you cannot have them. I know councils who have started planning for it. The October deadline is just to extend it to those who may need the time to do it. As for bylaws, many councils have been hosting elections without having bylaws in place. Bylaws are essential for council because bylaws help school council to determine one of the key things that you require for elections. And that is how many parents and caregivers will sit on your council. So if you don't have bylaws in place, it means then that you've been operating that any parent caregiver that comes to your council is a voting member. And if that's the practice, then you are not following the regulations in terms of how school councils members are to be elected. And keep in mind that membership of school council is not just the parents. It also includes a teaching staff, non-teaching staff, community rep that's appointed, student rep that's appointed where feasible, and also member of our Ontario Homeschool Association. And so this is why it's important that you identify a number of parents and caregivers that will be voting members of council, and that needs to be done with your bylaws. So because we've recognized that there is such a vast gap across our district among our schools in terms of what schools have bylaws, what schools don't have bylaws, how schools are operating, we spent the summer having conversations, and we'll be revising the TDSB school council bylaws template to include some mandatory areas that every school council across our district will be required to either A, embed in their existing bylaws, or B, adopt as bylaws for school councils. We will be rolling out that template in November to all school councils, and hope that all school councils will have ratified will have ratified bylaws by December 2021. Why this now at this time? Because we've recognized that many counselors have just not been able to get to bylaws, or bylaws is creating such tensions at local school level that we thought a template that highlights the mandated pieces that must be, whether mandated by Regulation 612 or mandated by TDSB policies and procedures, is a simpler way to provide councils with those pieces, so it removes a lot of the work from council. Fundraising may be convened in November. It must adhere to all public health guidelines. TDSB still not allowing fundraising for HEPA air filters, HVAC related items, or the rental or purchase of tents at this particular period in time. So some quick updates that I really wanted to talk to you about. So Michelle, what tools do school councils have for this year? I'm just going to take a couple minutes to walk through the tools that you do have access to this year. So I've gotten the question, do school councils still have access to Zoom this year? Yes. You have access to your Zoom accounts. We want you to continue to use them for your meetings, for your working group meetings, or your committee meetings, or your gatherings, whatever you've used them for. They're available for you again this year. And I just want to emphasize, in order for school councils to access the Zoom account, the school council chair is required to have a TDSB school council chair email account. So the moment your chair gets elected, then the principal will activate the chair's school council TDSB email account. This email account is essential. If the school council chair does not access the email, the TDSB email, then it limits your access to all resources and tools that are available to the council. So Zoom is available for you, but you need the TDSB school council chair's email account to access it. The Parent Partnership Fund, I've got so many emails about this already, parent reaching out grants. So the board has been approved by the ministry. The ministry has allocated the district $253,000. Now, many school council chairs may have been used to the days when you were able to apply to the Ministry of Education for a school council grant. The ministry discontinued that in 2019 and replaced it with an allocation. So all districts across Ontario now get an allocated lump sum amount to support parent caregiver engagement across the district. And so in terms of our district, here are some of the key areas that were being discussed for the grant. One of the key areas being discussed for the grant is a continuation, again, of the grant for school councils. So what that will mean is school councils will be able to apply directly to us, TDSB, for a grant to continue work on anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, and anti-oppression work within your school council. We started that last year. It was well received. We got feedback from a number of councils that said to us, it would be great if we can roll the grant out earlier this year, granting councils the time and the opportunity to roll it out properly, organize it, and get the word out about it. And so we're working diligently to get that grant process set up to enable school councils to apply for that grant. So keep a watch out. It'll be coming out. Information on that will be coming out soon. We also heard that it would be helpful if we can do a grant information session for councils in advance so they get an understanding of what is expected. They get an understanding of how they can utilize the grants and supports and resources. So that will be in the works in terms of inviting councils to come out to a grant information session. The other area that will be supporting the grant is Conversation Series, which is a series that features keynote speakers from varying areas that will join us on one evening per month, which will be every fourth Thursday of each month. So I'll say that again, we will feature a conversation series every fourth Thursday of each month, where we'll be bringing in a speaker who will be addressing particular areas of work. This year, we have worked with our Urban Indigenous Center, who will be identifying a keynote speaker that will be launching our first conversation series in January. We'll be having some fascinating conversations about very thought-provoking issues happening right now. So please keep your eye and ear open. The other area that the grant will be supporting is our annual Parents as Caregivers as Partners Conference. And I'm going to be plugging that all evening, which will be, as you heard me say earlier, Saturday, October 16th and 17th. Please just visit the page. It's just w.parentsaspartners.ca. We'll drop that in the chat for you, so you'll be able, for those who are on webinar. If not, it's www.parentsaspartners.ca, just to begin to get information and bookmark it. So once we go live with registration, you will be able to register. And So we're looking forward to providing these incredible engagement opportunities with the Parent Reaching Out grant. And then the other opportunities for school council is School Messenger. School Messenger will be available for school councils again this year, but remember, the only way you're going to access School Messenger is you must have a TDSB email chairs account. So the chair must activate the TDSB school council account if they're going to use School Messenger. And of course, your school email accounts are there and ready for you this year. One of our new offerings for school councils this year that we're very excited. So Thought Exchange is a tool that's used to, get a pulse. You share it with, you use it as a survey tool, an information gathering tool, where you can get a pulse as to what's happening with parents, caregivers in your school. You can get a pulse as to what parents and caregivers want. You can get a pulse as to how they wish to engage in the SIP. You can get it's a tool that you can frame a question and share it with all your parents, caregivers, and you get instant feedback, instant. And we're going to use it tonight so you can get a sense of how it works and how easy it is and how instant it is as a tool for you as council to be able to connect with your parents and caregivers. One of the things we're always encouraging councils to do is to consult. Connect with your parents and caregivers, find out how can we better support you? What are our gaps, right? Reaching out to your racialized parents, caregivers, and asking them, what are some of the key ways in which we can shift our practices to make them more inclusive and how do we bring your voices to the center of council? So the Thought Exchange tool, we will be rolling out for school councils this year. So please stay tuned. We're excited about this. This is, in collaboration with our research department, why we're able to gain access to this. Thank you, TDSB Research, for providing and sharing this with us so school councils will be able to use this tool to engage parents and caregivers. I've already talked about the bylaw rollout, and we heard you. And every year we try to do school council training. We've designed it slightly differently this year based on what we heard you say last year. So we're going to start rolling out our school council training sessions in November, and we're going to separate some of the training. We're doing school council training that will be catered very specifically to school council co-chairs. And we're doing that because there's some standard expectations of a co-chair that we think would be helpful in relaying to all co-chairs. So I say co-chairs, but you could be a co-chair, a vice chair, a chair, whatever your chair model is for your school. We're doing some sessions that are catered to you, right? So we can talk about what are the key components required to lead your council, because chairs, you're called upon to do that. How do you work to make sure your council is strong and inclusive? How do you become familiar with the regulations that governs and guide councils? And so we hope to talk to council co-chairs more than we have in the past around leading council. And then we'll be offering council training sessions that are open to council members and also to parents and caregivers who may be interested in understanding and learning more about council. But we'll also be offering some opportunities to our principal, because we think it's important for them to be aware also around school council operations and functions. Bear with me, I'm almost done. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing because we're hoping now we can move into our thought exchange. But before we do that, maybe I'll pause for a second. I'm looking at the Q&A, if there are any questions that I can answer before we go to the thought exchange. Margaret, while I answer questions, are you able to start prepping the thought exchange?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll take a few questions and then we can go live with it, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I wanted to give a little briefing. So we're going to be using the thought exchange, and one of the things to remember is thought exchange is a 3-step process where you get to share your thoughts independently and anonymously. That's one important part. Then what you're going to do is you're going to star or you're going to rate other people's thoughts that they've entered. And in a moment, you'll be able to participate, and we're going to have a QR code that will appear on the screen. And also, if you want to join by a link, actually what I'll do is I will share my screen now. Let me just go back here. I'm going to share my screen. It's going to be this screen. So everybody can see the QR code on the left-hand side. So what you can do is once you're in the screen, or once you're in the exchange, you're going to share one or two thoughts, maybe 3 if you get the time, and then you're going to rate 20 thoughts that other people have put into the screen on how you agree. 5 is you agree strongly, and 1 would be you disagree strongly. So what you can do is, if you have a cell phone, is you can go to the camera mode of your phone and position it on the QR code. It won't take a picture, but what it'll do is it will populate the link. Or what I can do is I can put this QR code into the chat, and you can join by going to tejoin.com and then entering our code there. So let me just drop this in the chat. Everywhere. So you would go to tejoin.com and you would enter that 9-digit number. Okay, so I could see that we've got a few people who are in already. We've got 8 participants already. That is great. So when I can see that we've got a few people in, we've got 11 participants in so far, 3 thoughts. What I'll do is I'll start the clock when we get a few more people in, and then we will stop it and we'll review everything. How many people do we have on the meeting right now? We have 44 people, and that includes us as well. So we probably have, when I hit 25 people, we'll start this clock. Is everybody okay with getting into it? I can see, okay, we're at 23. All right, so I am going to start the clock. So we have 8 minutes to go through 25 participants with 7 thoughts. So remember, you can enter 2 or 3 thoughts, 4 or 5 thoughts if you have time, and then go through it and rate other people's thoughts as well. And remember, as Michelle was mentioning, this is the tool that's going to be rolled out for school councils to be able to use for their community, your school community.
So I'm seeing the number of participants go up. I'm seeing the ratings, which is really great. So people are rating thoughts.
Yep.
And the thoughts are also going up. And folks, I am doing this because I want you to see how easy it is to use this tool and how immediate your feedback is. So if you're a council that wants to hear from your parents and caregivers and you're saying, Michelle, how do we do this where I don't have to be crunching numbers after the fact? This is a brilliant tool to use to do so, right? Because it's instant as it's coming in. So you could do it at a school council meeting, at a school council town hall meeting. You can do this in terms of your committee meetings to get, priorities determined. And look how easy it is. Your data is coming in as you are on your meeting, right? And it's instant and it's presented in such easy ways as well, right? that you can get it in a slide deck after. You can get stats, you can get numbers. So very easy to figure out how many parents want school council to do A, how many parents want school council to do B. This tool is a great way for councils to do that. So we already have 26 thoughts, 132 ratings, right? And we're just going to give 5 more minutes to this. So if you've not yet joined it, please do. Go to tjoin.com and share with us your thoughts, or just rate someone else's thoughts.
I can go back a page and we can see the QR code again. If you haven't yet joined, use your cell phone and you can position your camera on the QR code and it will take you automatically to this thought exchange. Or if you don't have the ability to do that, you can certainly do what Michelle said, go to www.tejoin.com and then enter this 9-digit number. But you can see that our data is coming in very quickly, which is great. We have 32 participants, but 32 participants have evaluated 229 times. So that's great. So we're about halfway there.
Okay. And I'm just looking at some of the commentary as they are being rated. Which is quite helpful and informative.
Remember 5? Remember the scale was 1 to 5, so we can see how things are falling out.
Thank you, everyone. We're almost there. We're just going to give you a couple more minutes. And, you know, the time we set, because we have a limited time with you, so you don't have to do a time limit for your exchange, right? You can use it just without it, and a time frame is for you. Because we're on this meeting, Margaret just set the time limit to be sure that we're maximizing your time this evening and using it wisely. But when you're doing it, you're not required to do this set, you know, you have 15 minutes, unless you're in a meeting yourself and want to manage your time in that meeting. But we did it in this meeting so you can see how easy it is once you have the tool to be able to use it for one of your meetings.
We got just a little less than 3 minutes left. So please take the time to do some more ratings. We got 526 ratings already. That's amazing. 35 people. So if you got the time too, you can put in a couple more thoughts so that other people can go through your thoughts and rate them as well. Keep in mind, whatever you're thinking might be important. Somebody else may think the same thing. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. If you haven't yet moved on to the star step, please do that now. This is where people can rate your thoughts. I'd like to challenge everyone to try to rate at least 20 thoughts. If you've already moved on to discover, please go back and do one more rating in the star step. So we've got 35 participants and 48 thoughts. Maybe we could get some more thoughts in there. Yay, we have 49 now. Okay, 1 minute left. Great job, everyone. Try to write as many thoughts as you can in this last minute. Great work, guys. Almost 800 ratings.
So Margaret, maybe when we return, we can quickly just show maybe some of the findings real quickly before we transition. Is that feasible?
Absolutely. So we got 10 seconds. So get your ratings in. We're at 804 ratings, 5 seconds left. Okay, so we're stopped. So what we will do now is we can move on to the next slide and we can see what was important to families. So remember 5 was the, so it's closed now. So we have 843 ratings. So we can see that, remember 5 was the top end of the rating scale. So 4.3, we had quite a few that are at 4.3. Ensure you act on what you hear from families, engaging the full school community so the council mirrors the school population. Ensure that all council members are treated with respect and all voices are welcome. In order to be candid and get some honest conversations going, participants need to feel safe. Find varying ways to seek input. And one of the things I should show you is we can actually dig in deeper here too. Not on this slide. Okay. When we get the report, we can dig in deeper. Effective communication. Ensure open and two-directional communication between parent body and school council members. I forgot to mention this one. Find varying ways to seek input. Everyone has preferred way of communicating. Continue virtual options. It gives greater accessibility for all. So you can see that we do have a varied array of thoughts that people rated, and also after they were entered, people also agreed and thought they were important. So you can see this is the number of people that actually rated this. So of our 36 participants, 18 of them felt that effective communication was important. So 50% of the people here tonight felt that communication is important. Same number felt that acting on what the school hears from, or what the school council hears from families is important. So you can see that this 4-point rating is generally about 50%, 17 and higher. So it definitely gives you a good tool to canvass or poll your school community to be able to get a real pulse of what is important for your community. And that's it.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Margaret. I certainly hope that those of you who participated, that you found it informative and easy, so that if you are a council chair, you may be thinking about how you use it, or if you are a member of a council, it is something that you'll be able to go back and share with your school council about the tool that's coming your way. All right, so we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda because I've noticed that we are right on time. And this is where we are going to encourage you to engage in small conversations. We have 4 conversations that will be taking place this evening, and you get to choose which one of those conversations you wish to participate in. If I could just ask my panelists who are facilitating to turn your microphones on, so I can then introduce you to our audience. Thank you. So I'm going to just go from my right, and when I say your names, please just wave. Nancy Entavine Sands. Nancy will be facilitating the conversation this evening around parent caregiver engagement, which is Let's talk about how we engage parents in the school councils to build them. Then we have Colleen Huggins. Colleen will be facilitating the conversation about council engaging in equity and NTO work. Then we have Felicia Cito-Lau. Felicia, would you wave? Felicia will be talking elections, and I'm sure many of you are probably in that place right now. And I know Felicia will have some friends in that conversation with her. So we hope that goes well. We have Dee Williams, would you wave? Thank you. Dee will be leading the conversation about bylaws. So yes, the most fascinating dialogue about bylaws. So please join her. And we have Wilmar. And Wilmar will be joining joining Colleen in talking caregiver engagement. I'm sorry, no. Wilmar will be joining Nancy in talking parent and caregiver engagement. So you should have the links emailed to you, but Margaret, can we drop the links in the chat for those who may be on webinar so they could just select the workshop that they wish to be in? Or it's been sent in the email that we sent out. So you may go there. If you're on phone, you're able to go into your email and find the links because we emailed them out right before we got started right now. So Margaret has just put them in the chat. So bylaws is there now, and she'll be putting them individually in. We're going to be in those groups until 7:40. 7:40. And when you're completed that, please come back here because then we're going to be open for Q&A right through, and then we'll wrap up at 8:15. So please come back for the Q&A portion of our conversation at 7:40, and hope to see you then.
Michelle, we have had questions in emails that people are requesting that each of the breakout sessions be recorded so that they can view it at a later time.
Okay, so I'm assuming that facilitators, when you enter in, it's an option that you'll be able to have to record their session. Please do so. I agree, though, at the consent of all your members in the group before you do. Elijah, the links have been posted in the chat. So if you're in the chat, you should be seeing the links. So my facilitators, will see you at 7:40. Please make your way to your workshops. And Margaret will be here directing people to those workshops. Okay. All right. So if you get stuck, just come back to this main link and Margaret will be here to guide you.
Okay. Wilmar, Colleen, if you can pop, and Dee, if you can pop into your session so I can promote you to co-host.
My group being the laggard group, I apologize ahead of time.
No worries.
We had a very fulsome discussion.
That's always good. I think we have 30.
How are we doing, Margaret? Are we having folks? I think we were the last group out, yes?
Correct. So I just wanted to spend, 2 or 3 minutes, Michelle, if that's okay, and I can show people what the reports of Thought Exchange can do for them. So once your Thought Exchange is completed, you go to what's called the dashboard, and the dashboard is where all of the information lives. So for instance, we had seen this live as it was happening. So each of these is a thought that somebody had contributed, and you can actually click on it and it will tell you information about each of the thoughts. And you can see as the 8 minutes scrolled on, how we got more and more thoughts, and how this person here, for instance, contributed on looks like 2 or 3, rated 2 or 3. So it gives you a lot of information like that. And one of the things that it also does is it gives us a word cloud, and everybody's familiar with word clouds now. It gives us 2 different variants. It gives us, remember the 1 to 5 scale. So this is rating it on the level, so the level of 1 to 5. So you can see that the bigger the word, the bigger the font, the more important this was to people. So you can see that communication and ensure community, engaging, voice. These were all really important factors that that were picked up by Thought Exchange. And then we can go over to this tab, and this actually tells you the number of times. So council was mentioned more times than anything else. Parents were mentioned more times than anything else other than council, obviously. And then community, and then you can see all the words that were important to people. So it will give it to you in two different ways, the gradient as well as the number. And then we can go into the actual thoughts. So for instance, ensure that you act on what you hear from people, and then you can write comments to it. And then if we go down here to tiles, it presents it in another way. So once again, we have the gradient as well as the number. And you can see, so what this does, the way that this was explained to me is because often we have biases when we look at data, things that we're expecting to see. But what this does is it doesn't present it in like a line graph or bar charts where you can see the different levels. What this does is it pulls out data that is important that you may have overlooked because it might have been, at the bottom of your bell curve or whatever, but these are things that were still found to be important. So it's just a different way of looking at the same information. So once again, this is the gradient, and then this is the number. So the number of times that these things were mentioned.
In light of time, Margaret, can we just go to the slide deck? We're going to have to move on to show people how they can turn it to a slide deck.
Yeah, sure. So one of the wonderful things that Thought Exchange does is it will present all of your information in a slide deck. So there's no thinking. You don't have anything to do. It puts everything into it, tells you all of the important information, gives you your word cloud, tells you your top answers, and it gives you your charts. And then you can also download this into a PowerPoint slide so that you can have it if you wanted to put, for instance, we might want to put TDSB insignia onto it so that we have it. And that's it.
All right, thank you so much. So if we've not convinced you that Thought Exchange is a great tool and an easy tool for council chairs and co-chairs, we've not done well tonight. And so when we roll it out, and we hope to do so real soon, we'd love to see you sign up. It's a sign up system. That's what we're going to do. There'll be a quick form that you complete because we just want to we have limited licenses. So we just want to be sure that we're monitoring it. And then we want to hear from you how you've used the tool and if it's worked effectively, because this is us responding again to council saying, we want to be able to use a tool to do this in an easy, simple way. All right. So now what we want to do is open up this now for further Q&A that you may have. If you have a question, maybe it's something carried over from the group, the smaller conversation that you didn't get a chance to ask, please go to the Q&A and put it in the Q&A. We won't be taking questions from the chat, just from the Q&A. And so Felicia, did you want to start the Q&A off? We have some questions sitting there now.
Certainly. One question is, if the school council already activated the Zoom account last year, are we good to continue using the same account? Big thumbs up. Thank you, Michelle. Okay, is Messenger re-enabled or is it still offline for school councils?
I've been told that it's good to go. But if you get in it and there's an issue, please let me know. The vendor has been working on it to fix the glitches that we experienced in the rollout, but I've been told that it's good to go. And remember, You cannot access Zoom or Messenger or any of those tools without your TDSB email account. When you activate your TDSB email account, you should automatically gain access to Zoom. If you're not gaining that access, it means that your activation was done incorrectly, because what we've done is built in the Zoom and the Messenger access right into your email account. So if you're not getting that, then take a look at your email account to check it out. And what we will be doing is when we send out the information, the thought exchange, we will ensure that we have the links in terms of, again, to Zoom, have the links in terms of Messenger, just a gentle reminder for you as to how to do that.
Michelle, can I just add one quick point? Because some people are confused as to what the TDSB school email account, school council email account is. The structure of your TDSB school council email account is SC-school name of some vernacular, some composition at tdsb.ond.ca. So it's not at Gmail, it's not at Hotmail, it's SC- and then your school name at tdsb.on.ca. That is the only one that will be accepted for Zoom, for school messenger, for thought exchange, for permits. All these things require your TDSB school council email account.
Thank you for saying that, Margaret, because one of the other key thing is when the school activated your account and your email is your first name dot last name at tdsb.on.ca, you were not activated correctly and you will not be able to access all these tools. So if right now your school council chair email account is your first name dot last name at tdsb.on.ca, you will not be able to access Zoom or Messenger or thought exchange for that matter until it gets changed to what Margaret just suggested. So it should begin with SC. If it doesn't begin with XC, then you've not been activated. All right, Felicia or Dee, did you want to take the next question?
Let me have a look at the chat. Can this thought exchange have multiple choice questions?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, that's a simple answer. If you need to get your TDSB school council email password reset because you can't get into it, how can you get it done? Who do you contact now? We'd all like to know the answer to this question.
Our contact for technicalities for school council remains John Manalo. So John.Manalo, Margaret, would you drop it in the chat, his email? And he can begin that process with you. What he can't respond to, he then follow-ups directly with our IT staff about. And so because John becomes the middle person, I just ask you to grant him some time to be able to get what your problem is, try to resolve it. And if it's not resolved, then he troubleshoots it with our IT person. I also see someone saying, well, I tried to get into my thing right now and I can't get in, right? Connect with John to figure out what the issues are. Please make sure that you are using the right email and that it's been activated, your email account, to be sure that you're actually doing that. Troubleshoot those pieces. And if that still doesn't work, just send John an email stating specifically what your problem is. It would be helpful if you indicate for him what login you're using, so that will sort of help him speed up his investigation. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. And I also see in the chat someone had the foresight to set up. TDSB had like a new process where you could set up your own recovery of your own password with security questions. And if you got on that boat, you are good, because the person in the chat said they were able to reset their password using that system. So that's good advice. Like once you get it, your access to your school council email address, make sure you do whatever you need to do to be able to reset your own password.
That's a
Great.
new function we added, the password manager function, so that school council chairs can just now manage your own password. So the less likely it is it gets disconnected, the more control you have with it.
Thank you. One question here is if we already have a school council email address, how do we access School Messenger, Zoom, Thought Exchange?
My first response, Michelle, can I just add a comment in here? My first response would be to, first of all, ensure that it is the structure of sc-schoolname@tdsb.on.ca, because as I said before, many people think that they have a TDSB email account, but they don't have it. So you can continue on, Michelle.
Oh, no, that's fair enough. Let's keep going.
Another question is, would elections take place through Zoom platform, and will translations be available for parents on that platform?
Yes and yes. So not translations, I'm assuming you mean interpreters. School councils can book an interpreter if you require them, and interpreters can actually be connected to your Zoom call. So yes and yes. Just go to your principal to assist you in booking the interpreter for your meeting, and you extend your Zoom meeting link to your interpreter. Once they get in, you connect your interpreter into your Zoom meeting and you're good to go.
Do you see another one? I have one here ready if it's okay. Does the principal still initially activate the SC email account?
It has to be the principal. And so let me just take a second and walk through that. The moment, because you were chair last year, don't mean you are chair this year. And what I'm going to ask is, first, if you were chair last year and you've been elected school chair this year, your principal should still go into the account and extend and reactivate you. Because what we do is chairs positions, your term is one. You serve a one-year term, you must be reelected to serve another term. So what happens is the moment you get reelected, the principal must go in and reactivate you or extend your chairship into the next school year. So if that doesn't happen, then you're going to have some challenges getting in, because school council chairs terms are 1 year.
Would you happen to know those cutoff dates off the top of your head, Michelle?
In terms of the school council chair
expiry.
email accounts?
Yes.
If I recall, I think they extend till I think either August or September of that year. And after that, then you have to go in and reactivate it. I could go back to IT and get the exact date and put that out in the communication we send out to all who are on this call, but just to our generic school council audience as well. Okay. So while you do that, I'm seeing a question about when will we know about how to apply for the pro grants and the PFF grants. I'm giving some timelines. We're just waiting now for the report to go through board. It will be going through the board's October standing committee. Once it goes through that committee, we'll be starting to prepare. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that we'll be able to roll out the grants by November to school councils. That's our goal, to try to get it out sooner than later. But there are a couple steps to doing it. And so it's a tentative November date we have to rolling out the parent reaching out grants.
Michelle, I have an interesting one here in the Q&A. I think it might be a two-prong. So this question is, I work as an LRS and I'm a council chair. I already have a TDSB email account. So could you answer that one, please?
First. If you are a staff of the Toronto District School Board, you cannot be a school council chair, first and foremost. I'm sorry to say that. but that's not TDSB's policy. That's Ministry of Education regulations and guidelines. And you know what? The reality of it is TDSB staff across our district have ways and opportunities and platforms to engage. If you're staff and you're interested in being a part of council, then you're able to be a part of council in one of the non-staff positions of council, but you cannot become a council chair, vice chair, co-chair, whatever model that is. And so if you have a TDSB account and you're trying to access the school council mediums, you will not, because your TDSB account will be your first name dot last name at tdsb.on.ca, and that's not a council chair's email account.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. And that's like a real highlight for the importance of the bylaws and being clear on who the members of the council are, who, you know, all of those details. Are there any other questions there? Are we allowed to still use other email addresses for school council to contact parents if we've been using them already, like Gmail or Hotmail, because we have a parent contact list built up? That's the question.
So, you know, I think the best way I'll answer that is nothing prohibits you from doing both. If you have your Gmail, I know most councils either have a Gmail or some email that they've been connecting and communicating with councils, you may continue to do that. However, if you're to use any of the tools that are available to school councils, you're going to have to get a TDSB school council email as well. So you might as well activate it so you can gain access to all of those resources.
And I see Margaret wants to say something.
One of the purposes for using, and I totally agree with what Michelle said, at the same time, one of the purposes for using the TDSB shared email account is for the purposes of future councils. In other words, if you've made communications out to people and then you're no longer at the TDSB, those emails disappear with you. So if you're using the TDSB shared email account, anything that's communicated on behalf of your school council is there for future school council members to draw upon.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thank you.
I see a question here. I think you've answered it, but maybe you can reiterate, Michelle, when can we expect the TDSB bylaw template?
November.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then here's another question. How do you proceed with a general election if there are no bylaws in place at a school?
That is a great question, right? So one or two options you have, right? I'm going to say, in light of the fact that if you have nothing, you're one, the regulation 612 outlines basic information as to how you run an election. My recommendation is that you consider running your elections, meaning you're going to put out nomination forms, right? You're going to encourage parents to becoming voting members. And once you get all of your nominations in by following the full elections process, you acclaim all those who submitted nominations form to your council for this year. And then the first order of business of council is to put in place bylaws, is to start working on your bylaws. It is the only equitable way I can think of, because you can't exercise that of which don't exist, right? So give parents an opportunity to engage and become voting members. And once you get your council in place, you then host your elections. Option two, if you have your council, remember Regulation 612 states that your last year's council is in place until you elect your new council. So your council may meet just for the purpose of passing a vote on the number of parents and caregivers that will sit on council. Council can approve that and you can pass it as an interim motion until bylaws are established. Once you get those numbers in place, then you host your elections. I think those are the two options open to councils who don't have bylaws in place.
Thank you, Michelle. I think that was very helpful. Dee, do you see anything? I'm just looking myself right now.
Just scanning through. Didn't see anything new.
Oh, actually, there's one question. Do all the school council members get TDSB email addresses, or is it just the chairs?
Just the chairs.
So just an add-on question to that. I think at one point, principals could activate email addresses, TDSB email addresses for parent volunteers. Is that still happening?
Yes, where schools have parent volunteers engaged in various activities, a principal may do that. But that's a different email account, because a volunteer account will be first name dot last name at tdsb.on.ca. So most volunteers that are activated with that, where school council members, chairs must have the SC in front of it.
Yeah, the school council chairs.
So there was a question at the earlier part that I'm looking at was, isn't remote learning provided by the homeschool versus a separate virtual school, or is only for high schools? You are correct. Remote learning is offered at local schools, or what the board is deeming hub schools. So what is a hub school? If school A had 5 students in grade 4 who expressed interest in virtual, that's not sufficient for a classroom. So school A may reach out to school B and school C to fill that grade 4 and 5 classroom. And therefore you will have a hub grade 4 and 5 class. And so that's how we're doing virtual. So yes, it is happening that way, but there are some schools where they have enough students in their schools and the schools are operating virtual. So it looks nothing like we did last year.
I think one last question I have is, if once school messenger is available, will councils have access to the school distribution list through school messenger?
Great question. No. School messenger does not provide you a list of parents and caregivers' names. It just provides you with a tool to be able to send communication. So you will not get school messenger and you're getting a parent's email address, name, or student's contact. No. All it provides you with is a tool that will enable you as a school council to send a message out to all parents and caregivers. It is not a communication channel. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you can't use school messenger to send a message and then have parents and caregivers respond back to you through school messenger. What you're encouraged to do is use school messenger to send a message out to parents, and then make sure, if you want parents to get back to you, that you put your school council email account in the message so parents are able to follow up directly with you. So it's not an interactive medium, it's an information share medium tool is what school messenger is. Unfortunately, Naz, that feature has been disconnected and deactivated. So the question is, has a feature on the email where we can formal emails to another account been reactivated this year? No, it has not been reactivated this year.
I see one here that says, last year, the activation email for the SC-school name email addresses instructed us to log in to first.lastname@tdsb.on.ca, and from there go into the school council address. Has that changed?
That no, it's not changed, right? Because you're going from the individual into the shared. So that's sometimes where councils get confused. So once you go in, right, you go in as your name, but in order to communicate with your council, you then have to go into the shared email account. So it remains a 2-step process.
So So did we answer this question? What is the deadline for the school statement of needs this year? The SSON?
We did not. That's usually the end of October when the SSON is due. But I know for some superintendents, they're flexible with that. So to get a clear date, check in with your principal, because each SO, some may say the end of October, some may say mid-November, depending on where your school is at in terms of that. So please check with your principal to get a precise date.
So there is a rephrasing of that question about the distribution list. Do we need the parent emails to use school messengers, or will school messengers send it out to parents for us?
Actually, the simplest thing of the way School Messenger works is once you log in, you craft your message as a school council chair. You identify, there's just a box there where you check that it's going out to parents and you press send. So School Messenger behind the scenes is already connected and linked to parents who have given the school consent to receive information. You just don't see it, so School Messenger will communicate all that.
So is there a tutorial or recording which shows how to access, operate the School Messenger tool? Or will there be knowledge sessions scheduled sometime between October and December?
Actually, we have information on School Messenger. And I want to encourage school council chairs to go to all information about school councils. Margaret, could you pull up the school council page and drop it in the chat? We're going to drop it in the chat in terms of two places that we encourage school council chairs to go for information. One, we have a school council resource page, and then we have the TDSB main school council page. Whenever you have a school council question, I encourage you as school council members and parents to start with our how to get involved school council page. We're really trying to put as much information there as possible. But I also know, let me not say, at torontopiac.com, there's also valuable school council information there for you. So on your screen, you're seeing the main TDSB page. If you go to community, and then you choose how to get involved, you're going to see a list of school council options. Then you go to how to get involved. And then you're going to see school councils. And you will notice all things school councils are here. So we have information on school council committees, school council elections, fundraising. We have information on, at the bottom there, you'll see Zoom, the series of workshops, how to access Wi-Fi and email. All that information is located here because we're trying to make it as easy as possible for school councils to access the information. If you're a principal on call, we have the same information on the principals page. So if you go under the principals page within the district and you go to family engagement, you will see the similar information posted there for you. We have instructions as to how you activate the school council email account, instructions as to how you do elections, how you do your nominations form. All that info is there and available for you in those places. So if you have school council questions, I encourage you to start here first. If you don't find the answer here, then you come. So here you have the information on School Messenger. It gives you a link to the School Messenger protocol. School council chairs, I encourage you that before you use School Messenger, you actually go through the protocol to be clear. I think there was a question in the Q&A about whether we could just send the message. No, once you craft the message, the principal has a right to review that message before it goes out. So you're collaborating with your principal on the message before you actually send it out in terms of the parent caregiver body.
So there was a question here about does School Messenger allow us to contact parents of students learning online or hosted at other schools? So how is that going to work?
Actually, it will be wherever the student is registered. So if the student is registered in your school, whether virtual or in person, School Messenger is linked behind if they've given consent. So if I'm a parent and I've registered as a virtual parent care, let me change that. If I'm a parent and my child is registered virtually at the school, then when you're sending out the school messenger, that child is already linked to that school communication that you're sending out. So wherever the child is registered, those are the names that will be connected to the Zoom. Now, if, for example, a parent caregiver decides, I am virtual, my child is virtual, but I'm connected to my home school and I really want to remain active there, then you're going to have to intentionally ensure that the principal is connecting that parent to behind the scenes request that they get connected to the school messenger to ensure that when email communication is going out, they're connected. So wherever the parents is connected in our system is who will be connected to school messenger. I'm watching the time, Dee. We had committed to go till 8:15. So maybe we have a couple people remaining. If we take 2 more and then we'll wrap up.
There is actually one here. What happens if a chair, co-chair, executive has been elected and is a TDSB employee? What then? Because it's, this person has shared that over the years, the chairs and co-chairs have been TDSB employees and the principal hasn't flagged it. Michelle, would you give us some words of wisdom on how to manage something like that? Navigate it?
That is a process, Michelle. Like I mentioned in my bylaws breakout room, that I've actually seen bylaws where the principal is stated to be a voting member of council. So there are little things that are happening out there that I think are like not totally correct. This is an opportunity for us to like start correcting some of those things. Like there's different ways of participating. You don't necessarily need to be the co-chair and an employee to participate fully in your school council. So that's my preemptive to your answer, Michelle.
For those who are listening, that's co-chair Dee Williams' commentary to say, please ensure you answer this question correctly, Michelle. And so the correct response to that is the school council members should have a conversation with the administrator and encourage that the administrator take a look at Regulation 612, the guidelines, and that the order of operation is that there should be re-election for the school council co-chair, as staff are not allowed to be co-chairs of school council. There are other positions on council. So for example, that a staff could be involved in, but a co-chair is not one of them. And so I support, Dee and Felicia when we say there should be a re-election because what concerns me about bad practice is that we pass on bad practice. And then a parent caregiver comes to council and questions it. And the response is, well, we've always been doing it that way. Because we've always been doing it that way, don't make it the right way. And at some point, we want to encourage that best practices are what being passed on to council. And so if it's been happening for years, I said it earlier, this is a year of disruption. Right? This is the time we disrupt it. We're not carrying over bad practice in councils. We're trying to disrupt bad practice in councils. So we're providing spaces for all parents and caregivers to engage in a meaningful way.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And thank you, Dee. Do we have time for another one? Dee, maybe you can ask the last question.
Okay, I don't see any new. Are they in the chat instead of?
So Delia, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay, great. I think that's it then. It's a wrap. I think that's the last of the questions.
Oh, no, I see it. I see it popped up.
Oh.
Just to clarify, what if a parent is a lunch supervisor at another school, for example? Can they be on school council?
So let me put it this way. It doesn't matter what position you hold in TDSB or where you hold it. And I've been getting a lot of pushback on this. I'm hearing a lot even conversations right now that that's inequitable, that this regulation disadvantages parents and caregivers, particularly racialized parents and caregivers. And I want to simply say that, it's interesting, the types of equity conversations we have and when we have them and about what. So this particular one simply states that if you work for Toronto District School Board, meaning you're getting a paycheck from the TDSB, being the co-chair of a school council not only can compromise you, but it also compromises the council, the committee, but also TDSB, right? Because you are being paid by the district. The school council is a space for parents and caregivers to advise the school and the district. So to be paid by the district and sitting on council, representing council and advising can pose a conflict for a staff. And why would you want to put yourself into that scenario? So I've gotten a lot of questions, but Michelle, I don't really work for the board, right? And it's only a couple hours because lunchroom supervisor positions are only a couple hours a week. The bottom line is that you are an employee. So in the chat, it says an employee at another school can sit as a parent member. So no, if if you work for the board and you're a parent, then you can become a member of the council in which your child is not attending, right? So let me say that again. So if you're a parent in the district, let me say it again. If you're an employee in TDSB and you want to run for council, Nancy, correct me so I say this correctly, and you want to run for council, you can be involved in a council, but you can't be involved in a council in which your child attends.
Well, actually, that's a
Did I
little
say that backwards?
You
Yeah.
did.
I said it
Yeah.
backwards?
You said it backwards.
If you're working at school A and your child goes to school M, you may be a member at school M, but you have to disclose prior to the election that you are an employee of the board. But you
Thank you.
cannot be a chair, you cannot be a member if you work at that school.
Thank you.
It's the
And under
passion,
no
Michelle.
circumstances can you be on the executive.
Yes,
you
and you can.
be chair or co-chair?
Thank you. It's the passion that comes across, Michelle. All right. Any more, Dee?
I think that was, we touched
We're at-
on all of them.
Okay, because we're at 8:30. We're well past. we
There's so
well
much
into
to
the
learn.
extra. We're well into extra innings at this time.
So may I encourage all of those online who had multiple questions? October 15th or 16th?
Yep.
Come to the
16th,
parents.
17th.
16th, 17th, join us at the Parents as Partners, Parents Caregivers as Partners Conference. There are always school council sessions being held there where you can learn more and go a little deeper into school councils, but we'll also have an array of information. So visit www.parentsadspartnersconference and just thumbnail it so you can keep visiting back. Thank you for the t-shirt, Margaret, to promote it. Thank you. So please keep checking back that page because we will be opening registration. Is that the first week of October? Margaret will be opening Reggie. You're muted, Margaret.
I'm happy about that. Is it September 30th? If I recall.
Okay, so yes, something like that. So check back the end of September and register for the conference and help us get the word out, all right? Let me extend my thanks and appreciation to our PIAC co-chairs, Felicia and Dee. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Those who helped facilitated, Colleen, thank you so much. Nancy, thank you. Wilmar, I think he's left us, so thank you very much for spending your evening. And to each and every one of you who joined us this evening, let me thank you for what you do, first and foremost. I know many of you are involved in so many things. And while you're doing all of that, you try and raise kids at the same time. So what you do in the requirement is not lost on us here at the district. And we extend our thanks and appreciation to each of every one of you for the commitment that you make to parent and caregiver engagement. So thank you so much for joining us. Keep a watch out. We'll be sending out the information following this conversation. Oh, please give us a couple of days to do that. So we're gathering everything and getting it out to you. So have a great evening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all PIAC members who joined in on all the breakout rooms as well. And reach out to your PIAC rep. Check out torontopiac.com and look for your PIAC rep under your ward. And if there's a vacancy, consider asking your trustee to hold an election and get elected as PIAC rep. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful.
Good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Michelle, are you staying on?